Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Cheltenham Borough Council Cabinet meeting. The meeting is being streamed live to the Cheltenham Borough Council YouTube channel and recorded for training purposes. So, welcome, therefore, to any members of the public watching the meeting on the YouTube as well. To those public that are present, if you make a representation to the meeting, you're consenting to the use of the sound recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. Just to mention that there is no fire alarm test expected, so if the alarm does sound, you should immediately make your way to the nearest fire exit door. I have no apologies recorded for tonight as all Cabinet members are present. Do any members have any declarations of interest to make on any of the agenda items tonight? No? Thank you. That takes us to item 3, which is minutes of the last meeting. And we've got two sets of those, because we had the 11th of July 23 and then the 25th of July 23, which was the extraordinary Cabinet meeting. Do any members have any comments on any of those minutes? Could I see a show of hands then, please, to approve those minutes? I think that's unanimous. We don't have any member questions tonight, but we do have two public questions. So could I don't think Mr. Hardy is here, but Miss Whitfield is. Would you like to come forward, Miss Whitfield, and Can we take your question and answer that you've had as read and ask if you have a supplementary?
Which I do, yeah. I have a second question. Am I allowed to ask this to Flo Caucus?
The supplementary must relate to the question,
yeah.
But also it's to the relevant cabinet member that you've asked the question of in the first place.
Okay.
If you, at a later stage, if there's a question that you want to pose to Councillor Clucas, then do please table it for another meeting.
All right.
But in this instance, it needs to go to the relevant cabinet member that you asked the original constitution. Question
so this concerns that it's the same subject, but it concerns the safety, the health and safety of 5G. So I didn't feel like I'd had an adequate answer to my question about how 5G is compatible with net zero. I'm a concerned citizen of Cheltenham and I've been researching 5G for a few years. It is not simply a 4G upgrade, but it is a completely different technology. There is plenty of documentation in the public domain which shows that 5G originates and has been deployed as a battlefield weapons system by companies such as Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. There are many documents produced by the military which confirm this. This poses a serious and substantial risk to the people of Cheltenham. So please could you advise how we, the public, will be safeguarded should the technology not be used for its stated purpose?
So thank you for your question. I appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. There are currently no known health risks linked to 5G. It's widely recognised that the strength of the signals used for 5G are incredibly weak on a similar sort of spectrum as your remote control.
Councillor Lewis,
and we have substantial evidence from a wide range of reputable medical institutions that support that position. The World Health Organization has not recommended any changes to the exposure limits for wireless networks, for which 5G is well within that scope. There is no current scientific evidence to establish that birds, bees or wildlife are negatively affected.
Lewis, can you bear with me a second? If members of the public wish to speak, then please do table a question. Whatever your thoughts are, not everybody shares your thoughts. Miss Whitfield asked the question and Councillor Lewis is trying to answer it, being heckled in an answer to somebody legitimately giving...
Absolute nonsense.
Your opinion is your opinion.
It's not an opinion, this is a battlefield weapon.
This is not a debate, there is a proper process. If you have a question and you wish to submit a question, please kindly do so at the next meeting. If you continue to heckle, I will simply ask you to suspend the meeting and ask you to leave. Councillor Lewis, will you continue, please?
Yes, of course, thank you. So there is currently no scientific evidence to establish that bees or wildlife are impacted by 5G. As I said, it's on very much the same spectrum as a whole range of wireless services which are currently not doing any great deal of damage. And as I said in the answer, I'm really excited about the possibilities that 5G as a technology will be able to offer us at the Golden Valley, and in the investments that we can make in technologies that will actually massively support our endeavours to achieve net zero. So I'm fully supportive of the technology. The consensus within the medical establishment, the World Health Organization, is clear, and this council takes its medical expertise from reputable sources. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Ms Whitfield, for your questions. So we have no council, nothing referred from council today, and we have nothing referred from overview and scrutiny or any other committee. And therefore that takes us on to the relevant section of section 5 for the reports. The first report tonight is for Councillor Wilkinson on the Cheltenham Trust contract. Over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Well, the Cheltenham Trust delivers several services at the heart of this town. The Town Hall, Leisure at, the Pittville Pump Room, Cheltenham's Art Gallery and Museum, known as the Wilson, and the Prince of Wales Stadium. During around a decade of its history, the Trust has transformed itself from a third sector organisation with a very traditional public sector approach to one that takes a modern, more corporate, business-focused approach. And that's something that I think all here can welcome. The Trust's work to generate revenue in the depths of the pandemic ensured its survival and the survival of those organisations that I just mentioned. Its approach since the pandemic has contributed to the savings that this authority needs to make, and it will continue to do so, I'm sure. But it has also continued to deliver important services and help us attract more visitors to this town. The Pump Room has been transformed from a venue that was mostly closed and mostly unused into a place that draws in visitors from across the country and indeed the world. The Town Hall continues to host some of the nation's top performers. The King's Coronation weekend in Pittville Park, run by the Trust, was an absolutely huge success. The Wilson is attracting record visitor numbers since its refurbishment and transformation into a smart and modern facility. We're all aware that Leisure at is approaching the stage at which it requires a new strategy for its future, and we know the Prince of Wales Stadium is an underused asset. The sports strategy this authority is currently putting in place will help us work with the Trust and other partners on the future of those facilities. Today, this report helps us to agree to start the process to re-procure the services delivered by the Cheltenham Trust successfully in the past for an additional period of time. As we do so, we should be in no doubt that other authorities in this situation, perhaps under different administrations, would have long ago sold off assets, privatised assets, or discontinued services. We haven't done that. Working with the Cheltenham Trust, we've kept those services on. Here, we choose a different route, and we retain those services and the buildings at the heart of what this town offers. And I think we can be proud of that decision. I'd like to thank Richard Gibson for working on this report, and Tracy Birkinshaw's input too. And I'd like to thank all the officers from the Cheltenham Trust for the continued good work that they do for this town. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Has any member got any comments that they'd like to make on this report? Is that, nobody looked at me or even indicated? Did everybody hear me? Okay, fine. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson, for your report tonight. And I think that the important bit is that this is the start of a journey to look at, perhaps who is right, therefore, to in the future to have the very important job of running our leisure facilities in one form or another. The Trust have done an amazing job so far for us. So can I see a show of hands to support the recommendations as they're set out? Thank you. It's a unanimous. The agenda item 6 is, again, I'm going to hand over to Councillor Wilkinson, but this is about vacant units in the town centre and the land use efficiency action plan.
Thank you, Leader. Well, when we walk down our high street, we see some empty shops. We inevitably see more than we used to in the past because of changing consumer habits and problems with business rates and high demand for rents. But Cheltenham is outperforming the average. And this report that we see tonight is the second stage of a report that was brought forward at a meeting of Cabinet earlier this summer. But even though Cheltenham is outperforming the average in terms of vacant units, around about 10% when our study was undertaken, we mustn't be complacent. And that's why we're putting together an action plan to deal with those vacant units. And for that, we owe thanks to this authority's officers, Helen Mole and, again, for the second time this evening, Tracy Birkinshaw, and as well as Heath and his team at Cheltenham Bid. So this report builds on the work that we announced at a Cabinet meeting back in July, and it includes an action plan. Members will be able to see that on page 45 of the report. It covers multiple actions to achieve the desired outcomes that this authority would like to see. That includes several aimed at the key desire of this authority to encourage more residential accommodation within the town centre. That has multiple benefits. It's very sustainable to have more residential accommodation in the town centre. It helps protect some of the fields on the edge of Cheltenham and other green spaces too. But what it also means is that we can have more mixed and more thriving communities in the town centre. We know that younger people like living in small flats in the town centre. We know increasingly that older people like living in the town centre too, because they get better access to lots of local services, and they're much less likely to suffer from social isolation if they're surrounded by people and things that are going on, and they're able to go to the shops on foot, for example, if they've lost their driving licences due to being disabled or old or immobile or any other reasons. This report and the action plan also includes extra enforcement against landlords who allow their premises to fall into a state of disrepair. And it gives extra prompts for landlords who perhaps need a nudge to understand sometimes that the premises that they've often rented out in the past perhaps can't command the level of rent that they have in the past anymore. And it includes work to attempt to solve the conundrum of how to bring empty shops into temporary use after closure. Many people have remarked that other areas are setting up community hubs and all sorts of other nice things in their town centre by finding privately owned buildings and private old shops and turning them into all sorts of things for short-term purposes. The reality is that such schemes are reliant on either significant investment by local councils whose budgets are shrinking, or it relies on investor landlords deciding to take a progressive view. And we'll be working on that as part of this action plan. Crucially, as well, this action plan includes asking the planning team of this council to consider policies to achieve the goals of the paper as part of the next stage of our local development framework and in other forms of planning policy too, as well as looking at what we can do based on the planning policies, both local and national, that we already have in place. I think this is a really important report for this town and this authority. I think this can lead to us riding the wave of change that is overtaking town centres and city centres across the country. And I think it'll mean that we can do it in a way that is sustainable and progressive and results in a more prosperous town for the future, filling empty spaces and making best use of space with retail, with commercial, with leisure buildings, and also, crucially for me, not me personally, but from my perspective, with new accommodation, much needed accommodation in sustainable locations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Any member would like to comment? Oh, okay. Councillor Lewis, Councillor Collins, Councillor Aston, and then Councillor Hallwood.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to congratulate the Cabinet member and his staff team on this particular report because I think it's fantastic. As Cabinet member for climate change, I know that one of the most sustainable ways that we can live is within easy walking distance of the amenities that make life possible. Also, as a young person trying to get on the housing ladder in Cheltenham, I can tell you that's not an easy task, and anything that helps build additional supply into our network of housing is a real bonus. So I think this is a fantastic policy from a climate perspective. It's a fantastic policy for the young people in our town who want to build lives here, and I commend the report.
Councillor Collins, just before I come to you, I should have done this before I introduced this report. It's a matter of housekeeping really, but just to say that our live stream is not working tonight. for whatever reason, but this meeting is being recorded and will be posted later. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to commend this report as well. I enjoyed reading it. I think it's very clear and makes a really, really good point. And as Councillor Lewis has just said, regeneration is in my portfolio. So that's really important because our town centre is the centrepiece of our community. And what I would like to say is I hope the people that seem to enjoy talking our wonderful town down will actually take 5 minutes to read this report and see what we and a load of other agencies are doing to try and improve things. Thank you.
Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to thank Councillor Wilkinson for bringing this report to us today, and to also all the lead officers and the Cheltenham bid. I know that this has been direction of travel of the council for a number of years now, to really identify the opportunities of providing more housing centrally in the town centre. I know that it can often be quite challenging when we have landlords that are absent, or investment companies, and trying to get in contact with them. But there, across the town, there are plenty of fantastic housing opportunities. And like the report says, bringing vibrancy and footfall back into the town centre will support local businesses, will support retail, will support leisure, and as Councillor Lewis mentioned, it provides affordable housing for those that need town centre location that perhaps don't have the opportunities for transport with car ownership and things like that. So I think it's great for young people too. Fully in support of the report and the recommendations.
Sorry, I nodded at you. Councillor Hallwood.
There we go. I just want to add my voice to those congratulating Councillor Wilkinson on bringing forward this report. I think the old monolithic model of having towns, certainly in planning terms, and as the Cabinet lead on planning, this is obviously something that I'm concerned with. The old monolithic model of having certain areas of towns marked out for where people live and other areas that they travel to, often by car, where only people work, is now hopelessly outdated. It was outdated even before the pandemic and even before we started to realise that the climate change implications of this constant commuting model that Councillor Lewis referred to is out of date. But also now, of course, because of the shift towards working from home and working online and entirely more flexible ways of approaching the whole thing. Planning policy has to catch up with that, and it hasn't done yet. And I'm, from my portfolio, very happy to support his drive to look at the local plan policies we have, which are coming up for review shortly, to see if we can facilitate that. And as he rightly mentioned, part of the deal here is that if we are going to protect local green spaces, our parks and gardens and other public open spaces, then we need to have a planning policy that addresses how we will deliver housing in a new paradigm. Developers given free rein, and there is a bit of a free-for-all going on at the moment, will always choose to build on virgin green spaces because those are the most profitable places to build, and they will always choose large developments because they're the most economic and the most viable for them. But if we have planning policies that say basically the deal is if we are going to protect those green spaces, we need to deliver more housing inside our towns and cities in the existing urban areas, then clearly this kind of change of use and this kind of intensification of housing within our town centres has got to be part of that deal. And it will make them more living town centres as well, and more exciting and more engaging places to live and work. So it's altogether a really good thing, and I'm glad he's driving this at local level. I only wish that national policy would also catch up, but maybe he'll have the opportunity to drive it forward at national level at some point in the future.
Councillor Jeffries and then Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, it's really welcome, this report. Over a number of years, I've seen different pieces of work trying to get some traction in this area. But what I really like about the report is it's quite comprehensive in the objectives that we're trying to achieve, but also in the stakeholders we're engaging with, which I think is one of the key things to making this move forward. As Councillor Horwood says, we love our green spaces, we love our green parks in Cheltenham, we love that greenness of our town. I think we have got a good record, I think, in the town of building on brownfield sites wherever possible, but it's that regeneration of areas of the town that needs to move. What we don't want to see is the town to slowly die. I know we're nowhere near that. As you say, we're above average when it comes to our shop occupancy, but actually the changing times, they do come across us pretty quick. So I think getting ahead of that curve before it becomes a big problem makes eminent sense. I do love the comprehensive nature of the attack and the approach. So happy to support. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Max. I think this is a really, really good report, and I think this is something that we can build on. And I'd just like to ask a question. And the question is this. Our town centre will have properties that can be transformed into homes for individuals, but also for those with children. And I'd like us to look at how we can make life better in our town centre if we have children and young people moving in to those homes that we change from being vacant properties into somewhere where people want to live. And I hope we'll be able to do that, Leader, because that will make such a difference, not just to how people see our town, but to those who live in our town, how they actually believe that they have a future in our town. And I think that's really, really important. So I hope you will take that on board, Councillor Wilkinson, and put this forward perhaps as part of the next stage of this particular policy that's going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clucas. Councillor Wilkinson, would you like to come back?
Raucous agreement with everything that's been said, actually. Particularly Councillor Lewis's point about homes for young people and Councillor Clucas's point about children-focused and child-friendly areas. I think that's really important for the town of the future that we want to be. And Councillor Horwood's comments about outdated planning models, I couldn't agree more. And we need to get over that. And part of the solution actually is looking at what we've got in the town centre as unused space, which goes back to the start of this report and why we've started this piece of work. I think it's genuinely this could be very transformative. But my word of caution is that while we have this report now, all of those points in the action plan, we do need to find ways of monitoring those and driving the agenda and making sure that we do come up with planning policies, and when those planning policies are written down, they are then adhered to, and then our planning committee makes the right decisions, and planning officers are using this in a creative way and using not just future planning policies, but also the significant, I think, powers that we already have just to nudge things along at the local level while we're getting to that next stage.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. That just leaves us to I don't think everybody's had a say actually on this one. It is a good report, so I don't need to say anything and add my 2 pence worth to it. But what I would like to say is, Councillor Wilkinson, is a big thank you to you for your tenacity to actually keep driving this forward, because, you know, most of those town centre properties that are empty, as the report says, and we all know are owned by overseas landlords whose bottom line is the only thing that really matters to them. Doesn't matter whether it's a vacant unit or not, it's their property bottom line that matters for them. So it's a great piece of work, and you're right, we just need to keep driving it now. So can I see a show of hands, please, to support this? Thank you. We then move on to agenda item 7, which is the budget monitoring report, and that's the report of Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. Colleagues, the monitoring report presented this evening is the forecast outturn position against our 2023-2024 budget that was approved by full council in February this year. You may remember that due to inflationary pressures on energy costs, pay awards, interest rate increases in 2022-2023, we needed a £2.6 million from general balances to balance our budget. Thankfully, we were in a fortunate position that general balances were at a level to support this. Moving into 2023-24, apologies, it was budgeted that £150,000 would be added to the general balances by the 31st of March 2024. At this point in the year, we are currently forecasting that by the year end, we will have an overspent against our approved budget of £475,000. This means that if the forecast remains in this position by the end of the financial year, we will require a further £322,000 from balances and reserves to bridge our budget gap. There are a number of external factors that continue to be outside of this Council's control. Interest rates, inflation, higher than budgeted pay award. That being said, our focus continues to be on the areas of our budget that we can control. We've reported many times over the last 18 months that our balances and reserves are finite, and without making further contributions, we will need to identify additional savings and efficiencies above the £4.2 million already identified in the medium-term financial strategy. So our focus as the Council needs to be on mitigating the forecasted overspends in our budgets, which are detailed in the report, and making sure that any savings and efficiencies are identified and delivered. And I commend the report to you, but I'm happy to take any questions, Leader. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Lewis?
Cool, thank you, Leader. I just wanted to put on record my thanks to the finance team and to Pete for this report. I think every time we get a new financial report to this council, it's incredible given just how tough the situation is right now and how little support is coming from central government, that we keep managing to push this amount down. We keep getting closer and closer to where it is we need to be. And it's honestly incredible looking at so many other councils across the country, like Birmingham, who have obviously just had to give their notice in. We are in truly astounding, possibly incredible shape compared to how many councils across the country are facing these challenges. So I just wanted to put on record my thanks to the team and to Pete.
Councillor Clucas.
Well, all I can say, Councillor Jeffries, to you and the team is well done. You look across this country, you see what's happening to our councils, as you have just indicated, Councillor Lewis. And what you see is councils desperately trying to avoid effective bankruptcy. And since 2020, Leader, 7 councils have issued what's called a Section 114 notice. You mentioned Birmingham, but there are others across the country. And those councils are going to find it increasingly difficult to work for their local communities in the way that they should. And what I want to say to you, to Paul, to all of those who've been working on this is, I look at Cheltenham and I see how Cheltenham is avoiding that, is not going down that route because of the work that's been done. So well done to you, well done to the team, and I think that Cheltenham should be incredibly proud of the work that's been done and the fact that we, unlike many councils from what we hear on the news, in addition to those 7, are likely to face 114 notices, bankruptcy in other words. So thank you, Leader, thank you, Peter, thank you, Paul, and the team. Really well done.
Before I hand back to Councillor Jeffries, I think one of the other areas at Flo, could you? Thank you. I think one of the other areas that, we talk about the Section 114 notices that you've both mentioned. I think one of the other really hairy, scary bits for me that are coming down the line in general is because of the cost of living crisis, each family in most of the homes is having to find something like £150 extra out of their very, very small budgets. And more landlords are selling their private homes because of the interest rates. So there are less homes available. So the increase on local authorities' services for homelessness is going to increase. That's not a guess, it's a fact. It already is happening, is that the increase in homelessness numbers are going up, and the financial burden on local authorities on that is going to tip some authorities into 114 notices just on the homelessness numbers increase, and the way that it's a statutory requirement that we support. And we really do need the central government to look to its laurels. And I know that the District Council network has done quite a lot of work, and I know that I've supported a letter that's gone and said, please look at these numbers again and help local authorities, because otherwise there will be many, many more than 7 going down that route. But Gemma and her team done a great job on the report. And I'll pass back to you, Peter.
Thank you, colleagues. Yes, undoubtedly we have a unique, very able and sometimes what I call fantastic finance team, and my thanks to Gemma and the team. I cannot take all the credit, if any at all, to be fair. And let's not forget, though, that this council was steps ahead of some of the impending storm. You know, we've got a commercial strategy, an asset management strategy, and investment strategies, and all these hold us in good stead. We are in a fortunate position. I wouldn't say we're in a safe position, because this financial storm is still ensuing us, as the leader points out. And I think that's where the difficulty is going to lie, in what we don't know is yet where the pressure is going to hit. The pressure we know about, we can obviously, you know, deal with and trying to work through. But equally, the one that he's mentioned around homelessness, you know, that's going to have an impact, and where it impacts not just on our services but across the town, and where the other pressures come. So, yes, I think we're in the middle of the storm. So, but again, thank you all for the comments. I commend the report to you. Thank you, Leader.
Could I see a show of hands to support this report, please? Many thank yous. This leads us on then to agenda item 7, which is the disposal of surplus land, Idsall Drive. Sorry, agenda item 8, not 7. We've just done 7. And that's the report of Councillor Jeffreys.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, this is the report concerning the disposal of land at Idsall Drive, or more commonly known, the Idsall Drive car park. Colleagues around in 2020 may remember the COVID recovery budget, where I think this asset was first identified potentially for disposal. Since then, there's been a considerable amount of work gone into this particular asset. There was, I think, some community interest concerned and raised at the time. Given that whenever we look at our assets, we take a commercial approach wherever possible. We do work through our asset management strategy. And when there's community interests, as you know, we're very supportive of our communities, and we tend to go above and beyond and try and support them. So, colleagues, you'll see that there was a lot of work undertaken in terms of the survey, in terms of the usage, to understand some of the impacts. And I think it's quite fair to say that actually the disposal of this asset should not have a negligible impact, if at all, on the car parking along that area of Prestbury. I myself actually visited several times over the last couple of years just to get my head around the geography of the area. There is a map in the report, but actually I wanted to see it myself on the ground. And for what cars were in our car park, effectively, there was more than enough spaces. Again, free, no restrictions, actually on the high street. So in that terms, I think we've covered the detail you'll see in the appendices. One of the other things we tried to do is we engaged with the parish council. Unfortunately, that conversation didn't end up in a conclusion where the parish council wanted to look at acquiring that asset, although we have done that in other areas of the town. And the other thing we looked at, briefly touched on, was EV charging, whether we could take advantage for the community in that respect. You'll see in the report, I think lukewarm would be the response to that. As we do with all of our assets where we look for disposal, we tend to move that capital receipt into back into the town, whether that's through our capital investment strategy or so forth, as we have done in the past. So I've got nothing further to say on that report, and commend the report to you, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffreys. Is there any member who'd like to speak on this item? Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. Just like to say that, yeah, I think it's very clear from the report that in terms of the car park being underutilised and to be observed over many days at various times of the day on different days of the week, that in generally 3 cars were parked there, 2 of which were commercial vehicles, the other staying well over the amount of time that the 2-hour limit, and the fact that there are 23 other spaces along the high street in close proximity to the various retail units where parking is free. And as we've just seen from the budget monitoring report, being able to create capital receipts from assets that are surplus to requirement and that will not have a negative impact on the local community makes a lot of sense. So I'm fully supportive of this report.
Any other member? No. I think before what I'd like to do is acknowledge the fact that I've had quite a number of emails from residents of Prestbury, very concerned about losing the ability to be able to park in that car park, and that a number of issues that they feel concerned about the sale of this asset. Now, I know that in the past, because I think I was, in fact, I don't think I know, I was the Cabinet Member for Finance and Assets back in 2021 when we took this report originally to full council, our revised COVID recovery budget, where, you know, our income was completely splattered out, basically, with the pandemic, and we needed to look at different ways of being able to keep ourselves solvent moving forward without, and this is the important bit for me, is without actually cutting services, you know, drastically to our residents. So all of the non-statutory services. So the law says we have to collect rubbish bins. The law doesn't say we have to provide a leisure centre. So, like many councils who have got Section 114 notices, the government intervenes, those leisure services will be stopped because they're non-statutory until they've got themselves back on their feet. So we've been very creative and determined as an administration to make sure that we don't cut those services. We continue to deliver, but you've got to find other ways of doing things. Now, we took the decision in 2016 to have a commercial investment property portfolio, and we said that we were going on a commercial journey. That commercial journey wasn't just about making money to sit in our coffers. It was actually about making money and generating income in order to not cut and to continue to deliver and expand on things that our priorities of things that we want to do. Any good investment company will always look at its assets and say, is this the right time? Is this the right time to sell? Is this the right time to keep? What do we use it? What do we use it for? Because at the end of the day, while this particular car park is in Prestbury, there is another car park in Swindon Village that belongs to the authority. So anything, bit of land or property that belongs to the council belongs to the residents of Cheltenham, not individual areas. So we look at those usages. I know that the car park at Swindon Village, for example, is going through a process of a community with the parish council that, you know, could well see the parish council taking over and buying the car park at a discounted price. Now, I also know that we went through this process right back in whenever it was, I can't remember, was it 21? When we went through the COVID recovery, and this was on the table then. There was extensive discussion with the borough, the district, the parish council at the time that we would willingly sell to them. I think tonight's decision is one that we need to make. I think a lot of the response that we've had, you know, that at the time the parish council and the borough councillor were fully engaged in the conversations that we had. I think halting this report today would be, for me, playing a political game that said, OK, we hear you, but we'll look at it after the election. That would be wholly wrong. You sometimes have to have a leadership that says, actually, we made this decision some time ago. We've got all the reasons. We've got the data. So you know, whilst I hear and acknowledge, which is why I'm talking at length, to those residents that contacted me, it isn't that we haven't heard them, because we have. But I, for one, will be supporting this report to go ahead with and agree the sale. But I think the important thing for me, as I've said in my response to those residents, is that doesn't stop the community or the parish council coming together to say that actually we want to buy it. And what I said in my letter to them is that I'm open to having those conversations. I think the final thing I'd like to do is actually, you know, I know at the time back in 21 that, as I say, there was conversations with the parish, with our Section 151 officer, and also one of our property people from here about the whole discussion of buying into it. I also know that the parish, with the sale of it, the parish council, because of some historical facts, will actually stand to benefit financially out of the sale of this. So I think my final request is going to be, actually, Councillor Jeffreys, would you please consider just going back to the parish council and having a dialogue? I think the parish council, a lot of the parish councillors that are there now were not there back in 21. I know that I've had emails from parish councillors. I've also had an email from the Ben Ingram, who went to that, was asked to go to the parish council meeting last night and to approach me with the concerns that they've raised. So I'm going to make that request and hope that you think that's a good idea. If I hand back to you now, please.
Thank you, Leader. I mean, yeah, I'm more than happy to go back to the parish council and any community group and have a conversation if we can facilitate that solution. I mean, ultimately, we would have to go to disposal if we can't find a solution, but I'm more than happy to have those conversations. I think this administration, time and again, proved itself to be supportive of our communities, you know, and finding solutions wherever possible is what we do. You mentioned Swindon Village, and I'm really, really hoping we're on the cusp of that solution there, which supports that community. But yes, I'm more than happy to take up a conversation with the parish council and any other persons that are interested from a community perspective. Thank you, Leader.
Could I see a show of hands then to support the recommendations as they're set out? Thank you, that's unanimous. Bear with me when I lose my, find my place again. That leads us on to section 7, which is decisions of Cabinet Member. Oh, sorry. No, that's not. I beg your pardon. I've jumped a page, or I forgot to turn a page, should I say. It's the, yes, I did forget a really important one. Sorry, this is the agenda item 9, which is the freehold or the head leasehold of an investment that we've had for very many years in Regent Arcade. This is to look at disposal of that, and it's the report of Councillor Jeffreys. My apologies.
That's okay, Leader. Yes, so for complete clarity, this is I'm looking to seek Cabinet's approval for the disposal of the investment we have in Regent Arcade. For complete clarity, I'm not selling Regent Arcade. We do not own Regent Arcade. But I just wanted to put that out there. It's for our investment in Regent Arcade. I don't know if colleagues have read the report, but I was astonished when I look back at some of the history of it. It dates back some decades ago when the Regent Arcade, and I can't remember that being built, to be fair. But I know that the council's involvement in regeneration matters can be quite crucial. You know, we look to my colleague there who's got it in his portfolio when it comes to regeneration investment. So, you know, the council does have ways and means of regenerating. I know that we look at the report that Councillor Wilkinson took. That's some of our aims and objectives in our town centre. Sadly, this investment has reached its point where you might say it wouldn't meet the threshold and it's underperforming. And on that basis, we're looking to dispose and sell that interest. This is the freehold interest, and for complete clarity, not our leasehold interest in the car park. So the report's pretty self-explanatory, Leader, so I'm not going to speak much more on it other than that. I'm happy to take any questions if needed. Thank you.
Any member? I think I'd just make a comment, really, which goes back to the fact this is about our investment and looking at our investments and how they're working for us. Whilst it has in the past been a good investment, it's now no longer. It's just getting less and less as an investment for us. So I think it's right that we do look at that. So this is a key decision, and could I see a show of hands for support for this, please? Thank you very much. It's unanimous. So section 6, which is a briefing session from Cabinet members. If I start with you, Councillor Dovey, anything that you'd like to brief on?
I have nothing to brief at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Atherstone?
Nothing to brief this time also, thank you, Leader.
Councillor Jeffries?
Nothing at this time, Leader. Thank you.
Councillor Hawthorne? Howard? Hawthorne?
Hawthorne? Who's he?
Hawthorne, whoa.
Surely some mistake. Nothing further at this time. Thanks.
Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, Leader. Just wanted to put on record my excitement for a scheme that we're about to launch very soon. I'm sure all the councillors have seen it. But we're going to be launching a fantastic series of emails that you can sign up for as members of the public or as councillors and staff on this council. I do hope you'll all be signed up once we launch it, which will be sharing really exciting fun tips, tricks and things that you can do to help lower your carbon footprint every single week for a whole series of weeks. And if you manage to complete all the tasks, you end up in a raffle for a cracking prize from a local business. So absolutely worth joining in. I hope the members in the gallery will be joining us as well.
Could I please, I've been very patient listening to your... No, sir, you can't just say, because I've had to sit here, all of us have had to sit here, listen to your comments, calling us traitors and laughing at us. It is not the way that you conduct yourselves in a public meeting, frankly. If you've got something to say, then please come and do it through the right channels, and let's do it politely. I hope I don't have to interject again tonight. Councillor Clucas.
Just quickly, Leader, to say that on the 6th of October, our children in Cheltenham will be presenting their view of what it's like to live in Cheltenham at the Literature Festival. And I am utterly delighted to say that the work that they've produced is going to be published and it will be read at the festival. And I just want to say thank you to the teachers, thank you to our Cheltenham Alliance for Race Equity, and to the Everyman and to all of our partners for working on that to produce something which I think is unique. And thanks to them and to colleagues here who have been very helpful in that. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Leader. Just one thing from me. I wanted to thank everyone who was involved in the recent visit by Arts Council England to Cheltenham. The members of the Culture Board were there to talk to Phil Gibby, who is the Regional Director, about all the good work that's going on within the Culture Board and within those organisations that are part of the Culture Board. It was a really, really positive day, and it just goes to demonstrate how much there is that's going on that's really positive in our cultural environment in this town. And of course, recently we've announced our cultural spend this year is about 1.9 million, which does make us a real heavy spender in terms of cultural spending for various organisations. And it's something that we can be really, really proud of. And I know that Arts Council England were really impressed by what they saw. So thank you to everyone who was involved and gave presentations and put our case.
Councillor Collins.
Nothing from me, Leader.
Just a couple of things from me. I think I was lucky enough to be, well, as most of you will know, the Gloucestershire held a limb of the Tour of Britain cycle race. And I was lucky enough to be given an invitation to go to Tewkesbury for the start of that limb on that day. I'm glad it was Tewkesbury because I gather Gloucester was absolutely rammed and you couldn't move because there was such a lot going on in Gloucester that day, not just the race. But you know, the best bit for me was where, yes, watching all the amazing riders go off and seeing them interviewed before, but the best bit of all for me was at the end, after all the support cars and bikes have gone, come what is the grassroots cyclists of parents, children, all out, hundreds of them. There were hundreds of those children and families just, you know, following the route of the race at their own pace. So that was a pleasure to do. I also attended another event at the Gloucestershire Gloucester Cathedral, which was the BBC Radio Gloucestershire Make a Difference Awards, which is really, it's the second year that they've run it. Last year they had it, an afternoon tea party at the racecourse. But it's to celebrate lots and lots of people, all of our voluntary organisations, to recognise what they contribute. And I'm quite proud of the fact that in amongst the shortlist there were 2 nominations from Cheltenham as well. They weren't winners, but there's some amazing people out there, as we all know, and we couldn't deliver half of what we do without those volunteers. So that's it from me. That does now lead us on to section 7, which is decisions of cabinet members. There have been 5 member decisions since the last cabinet meeting, which although could I ask those members who've made those decisions in the order, because actually give me 2 minutes because I have lost my piece of paper that tells me who's made those decisions. Can you bear with me? I think having a full-on day of media stuff and talking is, I've run out of words now. So we've got, thank you, Councillor Horwood, for those. The 24th of July this year, the Cabinet Member for Mark, Councillor Horwood, you made a decision to grant £10,000? Oh.
Actually, it's jinxed. I didn't, but Councillor Lewis did.
Councillor Lewis, do you want to speak to that? For a second there, I was very relieved that somebody else had signed off my spending, but such things are not to be, regrettably. But I am, however, delighted to support the fact that we have given this grant to the team at Planet Cheltenham, who are building a fantastic new community space for climate activism and for bringing together youth groups, older groups of people. It's going to be a fantastic space, and it's going to be a fantastic space in a community that I represent, which is in dire need of additional sort of sustainable community space. So I think our investment in their project is going to pay real dividends to the future of this council and the future of this town. So I'm delighted to be able to sign this off.
Thank you. The next decision was made by Councillor Horwood this time.
Yes, this one really was me. This is the decision to award a contract to ChipTech International for the supply of digital lifeline and ancillary equipment. I almost hesitate to mention digital telephone technology in this chamber at the moment, but as everybody I'm sure knows, by 2025 all old analogue telephone lines have to be switched off, and all our lifeline equipment that keeps people secure and safe and confident in their own homes, especially those vulnerable and elderly people in Cheltenham, depends or has depended in the past on analogue technology, so it all has to change. The value of the contract to provide replacement equipment is £101,943, and that is the decision that I took to award that to ChipTech. And I'd just like to thank Judy Hibbert and her team for the very careful and assiduous process of procurement and research that went behind that. We supply something like 500 or this aims to supply about 500 dispersed digital alarms and pendants, 50 fall detectors, 200 interchangeable wrist straps. These are all things that are really important to vulnerable and elderly people. And I have to say on a personal note, my dear mother enjoyed the benefit of the Lifeline service, and it gave her the confidence to stay independent in her home until she essentially shuffled off this mortal coil unexpectedly one day in her own home at the age of 95, and she led a very full and independent life up until that point. And if we enable that to be the end of the story for lots of other people, and to preserve that independence and freedom then I think we are doing a tremendously good thing. And these lifelines are exactly what they say on the tin. They are lifelines. And so I commend this decision to Council, to Cabinet, rather.
Thank you, Councillor Horwood. So the next decision was made by Cabinet Member Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Leader. This was a decision to commission artwork on the Honeybourne line. Regular readers might be aware that a decision was taken in the past to commission artwork on the Honeybourne line because of a change in the organisation that was proposing to deliver that artwork. We must start a new process, and that was part of this decision.
Thank you. The next two decisions were decisions that I took in August this year. One of them was a decision that there's a request from the Cotswolds National Landscape Board, who ask us to endorse their landscape management plan. So this was for 2023 to 25. And what that means is that by endorsing it, we will take forward as a material consideration in planning decisions, including development plan formulation. So it will form part of our planning system. It's not new. This is just another affirmation of it's not. We have done it before. I also, as many of you know, the managing director at Gloucestershire Airport departed, and I made a decision to appoint an interim managing director and an accountable manager for Gloucestershire Airport. Those were the two decisions. Councillor Horwood, thank you very much for your laptop. That takes us now into, there aren't any other items that I as leader determined are urgent and requires a decision. So that's the end of the public meeting. However, we do have, I need to read out we've got some minutes that we need to approve that are confidential minutes. So I do need to read out the Cabinet is recommended to approve the following resolution, that in accordance with section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining agenda items, as it is likely that in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, if members of the public are present, there will be disclosed to them exempt information as defined in paragraph 3, part 1, schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Namely, that paragraph 3, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Could I please see a show of hands to approve that recommendation? Therefore, the recording of the meeting will now be